So, how does a guy become one of the most feared linebackers to ever play the game, and at the same time one of its most controversial figures? That's what we're digging into today. We're talking about the two sides of Ray Lewis, a story of just unbelievable highs and one single tragic night that changes, well, everything. Okay, so before we even touch the controversy, you have to understand just how dominant this guy was on the field. The stats are just insane. 2 Super Bowls, a Super Bowl MVP, 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards, 13 Pro Bowls. He was a first-ballot Hall of Famer, no question. Oh, and he also holds the all-time NFL record for career tackles. I mean, these numbers tell you one thing. This guy was pure on-the-field greatness. And this quote from the man himself kind of tells you everything you need to know about his mindset. Greatness is a lot of small things done well, stacked up on each other. That's what drove him. It sums up that relentless, almost obsessive work ethic that defined his entire 17-year career, all with the Baltimore Ravens. He wasn't just some raw talent. He was obsessed with the details, just stacking those small wins day after day until they became a legendary career. But, and this is a huge but, for all that glory, for all the hype, the pregame speeches, the leadership, there's this whole other side to the story. A side that all goes back to one single night in Atlanta, back in 2000. A night that would cast this massive shadow over his entire legacy. All right, so let's set the scene. It's Atlanta. The year is 2000. Super Bowl XXIV has just ended, and the city is buzzing. Ray Lewis, who's already a huge star, is out celebrating with his friends at this popular nightclub called the Cobalt Club. You know, just a post-game party. But that celebratory vibe was about to come to a violent, tragic end. And things just went south fast. We're talking around 3:30 in the morning, a massive fight breaks out. And during this brawl, 2 men are fatally stabbed. Lewis and his crew immediately bolt, fleeing in his limo while someone is literally firing gunshots at the vehicle. The police eventually track down the limo, and yeah, there's blood inside, but a really, really crucial piece of evidence was gone. And that missing piece of evidence, it becomes the central mystery of this entire case. It was the white suit Ray Lewis was wearing that night. The police were convinced it was covered in the victim's blood, but it was never found. Never. To this day, nobody knows for sure where that suit went, and its disappearance is one of the biggest question marks hanging over the whole story. So what happens next is, of course, the legal fallout, and it comes down hard and fast. Lewis, along with 2 of his buddies, Joseph Sweeting and Reginald Oakley, were arrested and charged with double murder. We're talking a potential life sentence here. But then, the whole case just completely flips on its head. Just look at this. On one side, you have the charges they started with: double murder, felony murder, aggravated assault. I mean, the kind of stuff that puts you away for life. And on the other side, the final plea, a single misdemeanor charge for obstruction of justice. So the big question is, how on earth did that happen? It all came down to a plea deal. Here's the breakdown. Lewis admits that he lied to the police in his first statement. That's the obstruction part. In exchange for copying to that and agreeing to testify against his 2 friends, the prosecution dropped all the murder charges against him. The result? He walked away with just 1 year of probation. But the story doesn't even end there. There's another twist. Despite Ray Lewis getting on the stand and testifying against them, both of his friends, Oakley and Sweeting, were acquitted. The jury decided they acted in self-defense. So think about that. At the end of it all, nobody was ever convicted for the deaths of Jacinth Baker and Richard Lawler. So, with the trial over, but his reputation in tatters, Ray Lewis starts what has to be one of the most incredible, and you could say controversial, image rehabilitations in sports history. And where does it begin? Right back where he was most dominant, the football field. Now, he might have avoided jail time, but the NFL wasn't about to let him off scot-free. The commissioner, Paul Tagliabue, slapped him with a massive $250,000 fine for conduct detrimental to the league. And just to put that in perspective, at the time, that was the biggest fine ever given to a player for something that didn't involve substance abuse. Okay, but what happens next is, honestly, it's just staggering. You have to remember, this is just 1 year, 12 months, after he was sitting in a jail cell on double murder charges. And what does he do? He leads one of the most ferocious defenses in NFL history, the 2000 Baltimore Ravens, all the way to a Super Bowl championship. And he wasn't just some guy on the team, he was named the Super Bowl MVP. It was an almost unbelievable comeback story.
And that right there brings us to the heart of the matter, doesn't it? The core conflict of his legacy. How do you square these two things? The Hall of Fame player, the inspirational leader, with the guy who is at the center of a double homicide. Who is the real Ray Lewis? Is he a saint, a sinner, or something else entirely?
Well, in the years after the trial, Lewis leaned heavily into his faith. He became this very outspoken Christian leader and philanthropist. And that's where you get these two competing narratives. On one hand, you have his supporters who see a man who faced disaster, found God, and completely transformed his life for the better. But then you have the skeptics. They see it very differently. One critic even called his transformation a prudent business decision, a calculated move to fix a shattered public image. And bubbling under all of it are those unresolved facts, leaving so many people, especially the victims' families, wondering what really happened that night.
And this comment from a user on Reddit really sums up the suspicion that a lot of people still feel. It's that nagging thought that maybe, just maybe, his fame and his money allowed him to get away with something terrible, that he was saved from responsibility in a way a regular person never would have been. Now, Lewis did eventually reach a financial settlement with the families of both victims, paying them an undisclosed amount of money. And in his autobiography, he explains his reasoning. He says it was not an admission of guilt at all, but an expression of love, of sympathy. He basically said he gave them the money because he could, as a human gesture, even though he knew it could never bring their sons back.
But really, when you strip everything else away, maybe the most important perspective is the one that often gets lost in all the talk about football and legacy. It's the perspective of the families of the two men who died that night. For them, there's been no closure. The case was never really solved. The questions were never truly answered. And for them, forgiveness, well, it may never come.
So that's where we're left. Icon or asterisk? How will history remember Ray Lewis? Is he this generational talent and icon who overcame a horrible mistake to become a champion and a leader? Or is that Hall of Fame plaque forever tarnished by an asterisk? A permanent question mark about what happened on that fatal night in Atlanta. In the end, that's something history and you will have to decide.